The Radiant Daughter, edited by R.Y. Deshpande. Preface. This is a compilation depicting the life of Savitri as we have in Sri Aurobindo's epic, which goes by the same name, Savitri. In terms of text material, it practically occupies half of the poem, about 10,000 lines, the other half bringing out the yoga of Ashwapati, he doing the yoga of the Supreme, leading the mortal creation towards an envisaged divine life upon earth. In the words of the Mother, Savitri is Sri Aurobindo's, quote, whole yoga of transformation. And this yoga appears now for the first time in the earth consciousness, end quotes. We may consider that this yoga essentially consists of two parts, Yoga Tapasya of Ashwapati and Yoga Karya of Savitri. One is by intense yogic practices, calling down the divine power, Divya Shakti, to enter into the material world. The other is the dynamism of that divine power, the Shakti, who has herself incarnated here for the divine action, Divya Karya. Ashwapati comes here and does Yoga Yajna, the divine yoga of sacrifice, and compels the mortal birth of the transcendental power. In it is born divine Savitri as the human daughter of Ashwapati, the radiant daughter. This human Savitri, Kanya Tejaswini, carries out the divine action. The transcendental Savitri steps into the movements of a cyclic time, experiencing the seasons around. She grows as a child, grows into full and beautiful maidenhood, goes around the world to choose her life's partner. She meets Satyavan in a lonely, distant forest. They at once recognize each other's ageless identity, and all is settled in it. But the heavenly sage, Narad, pays a special visit to Ashwapati and tells in the presence of Savitri about the death of her lover 1 year after their marriage. This word of fate is actually instrumental in initiating her on the path of the yoga of conquest of death. Savitri remains firm in her resolve to marry Satyavan, and the marriage is performed. The year is about to come to an end, and she has absolutely no clue as to how she was going to face the inevitable moment of truth in her life. But she is at once set to do her Shakti Yoga, to gather the divine force in her soul. The day of Satyavan's death arrives in a summer month, and Savitri accompanies him to the forest where he goes for his daily work. The foreordained death occurs when the blazing sun is at its zenith and the god of death comes there to take away the soul of Satyavan. Even as he moves towards his abode with the spirit of the deceased, Savitri follows the god, demanding life of her husband back. Death denies, she persists. Eventually, in the occult battle between the two, she wins victory over death, who was none other than the embodied nothingness. Yet, there is a translucent wall standing between her and Satyavan. Savitri has cut a door through the formidable void and is now face to face with transformed death, the Supreme himself, who in the long process has assumed that form. He grants several boons to Savitri, but Savitri has only one concern of men and earth. Earth is the chosen place for the mightiest souls, and it is here the crimson seed of heaven should bloom. Bloom in all lovability of a new blossoming life. It is in this flowering she desires the return of the soul of Satyavan. Her earnest and noblest, her insistent yearning is recognized, and she is granted the boon she most cherished. Even while she comes back to earth with the splendid soul of Satyavan, which has become more splendid in the boon, follow in her fall Krishna and Kali, the Anandamaya Purusha, in whose will takes place all action of the consciousness force. That is the loveliest thing the radiant daughter has achieved here in the mortal world, of bringing down the Lord of bliss and the executive power to make this world a house of divine perfection in an ever-widening process of luminous manifestation. When asked by the elderly sage in the forest hermitage about the sudden change that had taken place in the world around, Savitri reveals the deep secret. She tells that she had awoken to the meaning of her heart, that the key to the golden newness is present in the feeling of love and living in the oneness with all. It is this love that makes this earth of ours a home of all sweetnesses. She becomes the darling of the Lord. Such is the broad outline of the biography of Savitri, the wonderful daughter of Ashwapati, the king of Madra land, as we have in Sri Aurobindo's magnum opus, Savitri. In the present work, we have made a selection of the passages dealing with this theme in the epic, and it is hoped that it brings out in sufficient completeness the life and mission of Savitri, excluding the yoga of Ashwapati, presented in the first half of the opus, and nothing can be more rewarding than going to the full text itself. But it is believed that here is a running diamond thread that swiftly courses through the mission and ministry of the heroic Savitri. Possibly we could have prefaced each entry with some background details, a kind of argument, and probably this could be done in another presentation. But it can also be said that an alert and perceptive, if not contemplative, meditative study, Manan, of Savitri, will always provide the needed connections and coherences. To be sure, by breathing and living in the glorious ambience of this radiant daughter, we can ourselves become a blazing part of hers. There is, however, another aspect related to this story of Savitri, the autobiographical in a double sense. Can Savitri be considered a life story of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother? Although the poet calls his work a legend and a symbol, there is a strong basis for seeing the spiritual realizations of theirs in Savitri. In fact, it is mostly these that we ought to recognize in it. On the very face of it, it is obvious that we can identify Sri Aurobindo and the Mother with Ashwapati and Savitri, respectively. If so, Savitri proves to be a record of their yoga, a deeply occult, esoteric document, the renewed Vedantic and the Tantric yogas forming parts of the yoga of transformation. The assertive statement of Savitri is the soul of the earth, opening to the divinity who shall be present even in commonest things, moving in daily moments. Nature shall live to manifest secret God. The Spirit shall take up the human play, this earthly life become the life divine. But an attempt to establish this relationship of Ashwapati and Savitri with Sri Aurobindo and the Mother should necessitate a much larger effort, not just a textual compilation, but an exhaustive study, a correlative presentation based on the occasional writings and revelations made by them. For instance, by the Mother in the collected works of hers, running into 30 volumes. This is imperative and should happen systematically one of these days. From a futuristic point of view, it will be extremely rewarding if one could build a one-to-one correspondence between the prophetic statements in Savitri and the work of physical, or specifically cellular transformation, with which the Mother was occupied particularly during the last 10 years of her physical presence here. In the meanwhile, however, we have just appended to this possible compilation a few quick suggestive notes to see the promising depths present in the occult spiritual biography of the radiant daughter, whom Savitri calls the daughter of flame, she feeling the kinship of eternal calm. the daughter of infinity. We are particularly happy that Savitri Foundation has recognized this extraordinary spirit of Savitri and commits itself in creatively furthering its possibilities in various ways. The present publication, based on Sri Aurobindo's work, is one such attempt, which, we hope, will be enthusiastically and discerningly acknowledged by its lovers. R.Y. Deshpande, 15th July, 2012.